Hey everybody, it's Claire back with another art journal video. So today I'm playing in the craft journal and I'm using the reverse of a page where I cut out half the page. And I've already swiped some paint across the page. The colours that I've used so far are marine, rosy and an Amsterdam acrylic paint in light rose. An odd combination you might think, but colours that actually work really nicely together. So then I'm using marine and I'm using the Squoval stencil with a blending tool and just adding some of that pattern onto my background. So quite often when I start a page and start adding stenciling over the top of my initial layer of colour, I will just use the same colours to add some stenciling onto my page. So there I'm using the light rose colour and using this mini favourite stencil. It might not be called mini favourites. Let me have a quick look. I can't see what that one's called. I don't know what that one's called. But that one that I'm using there is definitely called Mini Favourites. And just adding some more stenciling onto the background. And then going in with the rosy colour and doing the same thing. So just building the colours and the layers up in a really harmonious way because all the colours work together because they're what's already there on the page. So next I'm using one of Dina Wakley's chipboard shapes. It's one from the Men pack and I'm using some white paint. It might actually be mineral, and I'm using the shape as a mask on my page. So I'm going to be layering some of these masked figures over the top of each other just to create a really layered look with these figures on my page. So I'm using a lot of paint on my blending tool. And you can see that that means that where I have added the mask layer, you can still see a little bit of the background peeping through, which is quite a nice effect. So then I'm using a bit more of the same colour and I'm just going back in and adding a couple more figures overlapping where the other two are, the other three, sorry, and it creates that really cool layered look. And then even though this figure has got paint on, it can still be used again, so you can just add another layer of paint over the top of it, and then you can still use it on one of your journal pages. So it doesn't mean that you're ruining the chipboard figure using it as a mask. If you didn't want to use the actual chipboard figure, you could draw around it onto some card and then you can use that as your mask instead of using the actual chipboard figure. So here I'm painting one in night and I'm using night because it kind of works quite nicely with the colours that I've already used on my page. Because I've used that marine colour which has got that bluey tint to it, it means that the night colour on the figure will be quite harmonious with the colours that are already there. So here I'm using a Signo Uniball in white and I'm just outlining those figures in quite a loose way. I'm not too worried about keeping my lines neat and tidy. I really just want to kind of draw the eye to those shapes that are there on the page, and this is quite a good way to do that. Then I decided I didn't want that figure to be night, so I'm painting it in that light pink colour. I think it felt like too much of a contrast with the rest of the page when I put it on. It was too dominant and I didn't really want it to be that way. So a couple of layers of this light rose colour from Amsterdam acrylic fixed it, and I liked it much better, this nice pretty pale pink colour. Maybe that's because I was wearing a pink jumper, I don't know. Perhaps there was something funny going on there. And then here I am just adding a little heart onto each of the figures. Just using a neutral coloured Posca pen. Then I'm going to be stapling this figure in onto my page, and I just decided that I would add a little bit of text onto my page too. So I'm using the Mantras stencil from Dina Wakley, just with a bit of the marine colour again. I kind of like how that makes that come together. And then I used the rosy and just added a few splatters, which don't really show up on the video, but they did look so pretty. Those colours from Dina Wakley, like medieval and rosy and ancient, are so pretty when they're done as splatters. They work really nicely. Then I've got the figure, and I'm using the permanent red violet light from Amsterdam acrylic and just adding a bit of that onto the figure too. Then I'm using a Pitt marker pen, and just down one side of the figures I'm just adding a little bit of shadow, and all that does is just to help pop those out of the page a little bit. It makes them a little bit more 3D, and just helps them to stand out a little bit more obviously from the background. These Pitt marker pens are so lovely for doing that kind of smudgy effect too. So then I'm just using a text stamp from one of Dina's stamp sets, and stamping it onto some collage tissue paper, and then I'm using some archival ink to do that in black, and then I will be sticking these onto my page. So the reason I stamped them onto collage tissue paper was so that when they're stuck down, you will still be able to see the background through them, because they do go very translucent once they're down and stuck in place. So they will be more part of the journal page rather than being something that kind of leaps out at you because they're on white paper. So that was my reason for doing it onto the collage tissue paper. And then, of course, it wouldn't be one of my pages without my dotty mark making. So that's what I'm doing next. So finally, I'm just adding some text onto the page, some handwritten words, and I'm using a Posca pen to do this. And I'm just weaving those words along the top of the page in a kind of a wavy sort of way, following the shape of the top of the figures. And they're just checking it would all fit. And it didn't quite, so I had to finish it off underneath. But it really doesn't matter. I wasn't particularly bothered that it hadn't quite fit in one line. It still worked okay. And there we go, that's the finished page. So I hope you've enjoyed watching me using a chipboard figure shape to create a masked look on my journal page. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.